Welcome back to JNS Daily Drives, everyone. My name is Jacob, and today we're going to be taking a look at this unique car, this 2013 Nissan Leaf. In today's video, we're going to go over the exterior as well as the interior, talk about what's powering this little electric car, see what it's like to drive. Let's get started. Now I want to start with the front end of the Nissan Leaf. We have a very elegant and unique front end. It's quite bubble shaped, but I kind of like that with this car, especially with electric cars, seeing as they're supposed to be eco-friendly. This car fits in with that just perfectly. Down below we do have a small grille, but it's more for aerodynamics than it is for cooling. Because it is an electric car, it doesn't need to be cooled. Now I want to talk about this for a second. This is the little charging area. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to grab the key. So I'm going to go ahead, lift this thing up, and there we go. We have the charging right there. Another unique feature about this little flap is the actual front camera, which you can probably see just right there. This car has a full 360-degree camera system, and it's built in right there. One last unique feature about the front end of the Nissan Leaf are the headlights. Now the headlights have a very unique design to them. You can see them from the front, but one of the coolest things about them is how much they bulge out of the front of the car. Most cars, they're integrated really well and hidden, but in this, all the way from the back of the front hood area almost to the front of the entire bumper, this light comes out and it rises about 3.5 inches, which is very, very cool. Now we move to the side of the Nissan Leaf, where we can talk a little bit more about the design over here. We have 17-inch alloy wheels, which are more designed to be aerodynamic than they are to be stylish. Zero emissions on the side. Obviously this is an electric car, so you're not going to get any fuel economy whatsoever. We do have keyless entry located right here by the buttons, simply to open. We have a nice little third window here to increase visibility for the driver. We also have a small little rear window here. The visibility in the car is fantastic. We'll talk a little bit about that more when we get inside. I want to quickly talk a little bit about the rear space back here. Now, as someone who's relatively small sitting in front of me, my legroom isn't great. I'm 6'2", and it's just not all that great. And behind myself it wouldn't even work. Other than that, the seats are very comfortable. Headroom is much better than any other smaller car that I have reviewed, so kudos to them on that. Headroom is great, legroom not amazing, but the overall feel back here is fantastic. Now I want to point something out on the rear of the Nissan Leaf, which is unique, and I also kind of touched on something on the front that is similar. So we talked about the headlights in the front. Now I want to talk about the taillights. We have these very unique taillights stretching all the way from the top of the trunk down to right about where the rear trunk opens. Overall back here, it's again not the most beautiful looking car. I'm not a huge fan of the rear end, but like I said, it's all about efficiency, practicality, so on and so forth. The Nissan badge is in blue to indicate that this car is an electric car. We have our rear camera here, and simply trunk space, I must say, is pretty darn good. Because it's so much lower in the back, it's kind of like a minivan, the way that a minivan's trunk space goes down, meaning that I could probably fit 4 full-size pieces of luggage, 4 full-size suitcases back here. So located right here is the cargo space with the seats folded up, and right here is with the seats folded down. So the Nissan Leaf is powered by an 80 kilowatt electric motor. So that's 104 horsepower and 180 pound-feet of torque. Let's go ahead and take a look at whatever we can look at. Now here's that electric motor. Like I said, it doesn't produce a crap ton of power and a crap ton of torque, but it is sufficient enough for this small little car. We can't really hear what it sounds like, nor can we get an exhaust clip. So there's nothing left to do but go for a drive. Before we go on with the rest of this review, I want to say a massive thank you to Norm and the rest of the team over at International MotorCars for providing me with this Nissan Leaf today. It's a very unique car, and it's actually the only one for sale in Alberta right now. So make sure you go check out their link in the description below, along with the link to this exact car, which is for sale right now. You should go get it. So now that we're inside and we're driving the Nissan Leaf, we can talk a little bit more about that electric motor and the transmission that it's mated to. So that's a 1-speed automatic transmission. Because this car has no gears and has instant torque at 0 RPM, the car still moves pretty well. Despite only having 104 horsepower and 180 pound-feet of torque, this car moves relatively well. Now, if I put it into regular mode, the power is definitely sufficient. In eco mode, it's a little bit lackluster. There's not a whole bunch of power there. But if you take it out of eco mode and into regular mode, the car is just fine. You don't expect this car to move quite like a lot of other vehicles because it only has such a small amount of power and torque. It's not gonna destroy anybody by any means in any races, but it's still easy and relatively fun to drive. If I'm in regular mode, the steering is a little bit stiffer than it is in eco mode. In eco mode, it's literally, you could turn it with a pinky. That's how light it is. It just makes driving this car that much easier in and around town, which is what this car is all about. Now let's talk a little bit about the interior quality and what it's like to sit in the Nissan Leaf. The interior quality is very good. Everything is put together really well. No, it's not the most amazing materials in the world, but it does all feel good. I like the layout. The center console here feels good. This is laid out perfectly as well. The screen tilts and closes so you can access your CD, your map discs, all integrated into behind there. Simply push the button again, and it goes back to normal. Cool little feature about this car. Another thing is all of the materials on the doors feel good. The leather on the door feels fantastic. This car also has a bunch of extra features that the normal Leaf doesn't have. It has a Bose sound system, which sounds absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the best sound systems that you can get in a car. Along with that, it does have a lot of safety tech, which I'll get into in just a moment. But overall, the interior of this car is put together very well, and it feels quite nice. The seats are not the most comfortable seats in the world, but they do feel pretty good. There's pretty much zero bolstering on the sides and on the bottom, but that's not really what you would expect from a car like this. Another thing I want to touch on about the interior of this car is the sound deadening. Now, most cars do a pretty good job at their sound deadening. Unfortunately, this car doesn't do a very good job of it. You kind of hear a lot of the road noise, and part of that is the fact that because the electric motor is so quiet, sometimes in other cars you would hear the engine and it would kind of mitigate some of that road noise, but because there's absolutely nothing in this and not the most amazing sound deadening, you do hear a lot of stuff on the road. Now let's talk a little bit about how the Nissan Leaf is to drive. It's a very, very easy car to drive. It's like any other electric car, but it doesn't have a crazy amount of power that's going to scare you. You know, even when you're in regular mode, the torque isn't that crazy when you hammer it, even though it's all there right away. It feels nice. The suspension is really good. It's very soft. You go over these bumps, you don't really feel them, even though it's a smaller car. The steering, like I said, in regular mode is a little bit better. We're going to come up on a couple corners here, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But overall, to drive this car, it's super easy, super stress-free, which is one of the big things about this car. Now we're coming up on a few corners here. Let's go ahead and we'll talk about the handling of this car. Now, it's not the best handling car in the world, and you don't expect it to be. But how well does it actually do? So here we go. Obviously, we have front-wheel drive. It's going to tend to understeer quite a little bit. But here we go. We're about to find out. We have a long sweeping corner. Handle's okay. There's quite a lot of body roll. You can feel that because the car is up a little bit higher. Yeah, you really feel the body roll. But it's not too bad, actually. The body roll does push you out of your seat because it doesn't have the most amazing bolstering, but it does a pretty good job of getting you around the corner itself. The brakes are fantastic as well. They help you stop on a dime. Now, one of the biggest things that I want to talk about any electric car in general is the range. And the Tesla Model S that I drove had fantastic range. It was really an innovation in electric technology, bringing the range up to what a gasoline car could get. This, it doesn't though. Unfortunately, this car only gets around 95 kilometers per charge. 95 kilometers. Now let's talk about the safety features on this Nissan Leaf. It's not fully packed with safety features, but it does have enough to make sure that you are safe. You have cruise control, you have forward collision warning, you have a 360-degree monitoring camera system, which makes parking that much easier. A lot of cars, especially older cars, don't have much in terms of safety features. It's nice to see that this one does. I want to quickly talk about the space on the inside of the cabin of the Nissan Leaf. So like I said, in the rear, it's not amazing. The headroom is pretty good, but the legroom isn't fantastic. But in the front, the space is actually absurd. If you look at my headroom, I probably have 5 inches of extra headroom above me, and I'm 6'2", meaning that someone much taller than myself could fit in here. Knee room is great as long as you move your seat back. If you're too close to the steering wheel, your left knee will hit this area over here, but that's easily fixed by moving the seat back. Shoulder room is also great, and because these seats aren't bolstered very much, the hip room is fantastic as well. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you did, make sure to smash that like button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well. See you next time. I'm spinning out,